Although now powered by a diesel engine, this open-top trolleybus dates from 1928. When new, it formed part of an inaugural fleet of 8 Guy 3-axle vehicles with Dodson bodies.
Oh, very tight, please!
On withdrawal in 1940, it was converted into work vehicle number 3A. Its subsequent history is told later in the video. Suffice to say, this historic vehicle is now owned by Hastings Council, but looked after by the Hastings Trolleybus Restoration Group. Today, this amazing survivor carries the fleet name of the one-time Hastings and District Tramways Company. Between 1905 and 1906, the company had opened a 3-foot 6-gauge tramway, which was worked by a fleet of some 60 four-wheel open toppers. Opposition to unsightly overhead wires led to use of the Dolter surface contact system, but only on the seafront section from the Memorial to the West Marina at St Leonard's. Note the trolley poles tied down on both cars. Elsewhere, current was drawn in the more orthodox manner. The Dolter surface system having proved unreliable, during the period 1914 to 1921, the trams were fitted with petrol engines to generate current for the motors. After 1921, the entire system used overhead wires. In 1927, powers were obtained to operate trolleybuses over the existing tram system, as well as a few limited extensions, on the understanding the trams would all be replaced by March 1930. This was easily accomplished, and within just over a year a mixed fleet of 3-axle single-decker and double-decker trolleybuses had taken over. The first conversion occurred on the 1st of April 1928. A distant glimpse of a tram is seen in the background. Arousing great public interest and curiosity, 4 lavishly decorated vehicles inaugurated the first route, which incorporated the former tram line to Hollington, together with a short extension from the Memorial to the Fish Market. Number 3 would later be preserved. Painted in the Hastings and District livery, which was believed to be chocolate brown and cream, service was provided by 8 Guy BTX 60s with pneumatic tyres. These had 57-seater open-top Dodson-built bodies. Great crowds gathered to ride on the first of the trolleybuses. The 8 vehicles comprise the first open-top fleet of trolleybuses anywhere in the country. number 5 sets off for Hollington. The remaining trams were phased out in stages. The last to go was the rural link between St Helens and Silverhill as from the 16th of May 1929. For a brief period, Hastings boasted the largest trolleybus system in the world. The wiring gauge was just 18 inches. This sequence shows the reverser in the forecourt at the Victoria Inn, Hollington, which would later be replaced by a turning circle at the end of a short extension opened in 1947. Joining the 8 double-deckers were a further 50 Guy BTX 60 chassis, but with 32-seater centre entrance bodies by Ransom, Sims and Jeffries. A few minor extensions shown in green were opened in the early 30s, bringing the total length to just over 22 miles. The hub of the system was at the Memorial, which was also served by a variety of buses. A Timpson AEC Regent is followed by an East Kent Tilling Stevens. This is a Maidstone and District AEC Regal. During the early life of the trolleybus system, many changes were made to the route pattern. For example, in 1932, there were 12 listed services, frequencies varying from 7 to every 45 minutes. The 8 double-deckers provided a 7-minute headway on the busy Fish Market to Hollington service. They also appeared on the coastal route to Couden, where in places the tram track was still in evidence. The single-deckers covered the remaining routes. When the company became a wholly owned subsidiary of Maidstone and District Motor Services in November 1935, the trolleybuses were painted green and cream and carried the fleet name Hastings Tramways. With the closure of Orr Power Station in 1936, current was purchased from the municipal supply. To replace most of the older guys, an order was placed in 1939 for 48 new double-deckers. However, owing to the outbreak of war, only 20 of these AEC 661Ts were delivered, the first entering service in June 1940. Numbers 1 to 10 had Wayman bodies, whilst 11 to 20 were by Park Royal. The Guy open toppers were withdrawn between 1939 and 1940. Fortunately, 3 escaped the scrapman, becoming a mobile workshop in 1940. With loss of traffic due to the war, some single-deckers were stored at Bulverhythe Depot. Although only used for storage after 1940, the site remains today, together with a few telltale signs of its former occupants. Eighteen surplus single-deckers were sold to more hard-pressed operators, 6 going to Nottingham in 1941. Followed by 6 to Derby in 1942, plus a further 6 to Mexborough and Swinton undertaking, including number 29, seen here. The first post-war deliveries arrived during 1946. These comprised 10 Sunbeam Ws with Park Royal 56-seater bodies. The only post-war extension involved replacement of the Hollington reverser by a new turning circle opened in November 1947. Between August 1947 and October 1948, a further 15 Sunbeam Ws were delivered, this time with 56-seater Wayman bodies. One was hired by the Southern Counties Touring Society for a tour of the system on September the 12th, 1948. Running round at Couden Beach. Here, number 42 uses the depot-only wiring on Beaufort Road, prior to entering Silver Hill Depot. This detailed sequence was filmed inside the depot during the late 40s.
I have met this
41 would eventually end its days in the West Midlands. This final batch of Sunbeams had 95 horsepower motors, as opposed to 85 on the earlier Sunbeams and 80 on the AECs. The entire fleet was fitted with coasting brakes, which had to be engaged before tackling the steepest gradients. In Hastings, the left foot pedal operated the brake and the right the power. Watch for the single-decker on the depot forecourt. After 1947, the remaining single-deckers were relegated to standby duties. A few were also renumbered. For example, 20 had become 60. The Southern Counties Touring Society paid the town another visit on July the 29th, 1951. This time, they also rode a short-lived 15-inch gauge tramway at St Leonard's. These miniature cars would later enjoy a lengthier sojourn at Eastbourne. Another rare piece of Southern Counties film shows the little-used Hellingly electric tramway. Located north of Eastbourne, this short standard-gauge line linked Hellingly Station to Hellingly Hospital, a distance of just over 1 mile. Jack Wise made this more comprehensive survey in the late 50s. Opened in 1904, the line had railway-type track, but tramway-style bracket arms supporting the overhead. Although passenger traffic had ceased in 1931, the tiny four-wheel steeple cab continued to bring coal for the hospital furnaces. Arriving at the hospital. The body of the former passenger car had survived as a sports pavilion. The interchange sidings were just south of Hellingley Station. The tramway eventually closed in 1961. Back in Hastings, the last single-deckers had bowed out at the end of the 1952 season. Most were scrapped, although number 45, withdrawn in 1950 as number 46, survived and was converted in May 1953 into a Maidstone and District ticket office and placed outside their coach station on Queen's Road. In 1972, the veteran single-decker was presented to the National Trolleybus Association. Following long years in storage, it is now undergoing restoration at St Leonard's, with the long-term objective of fitting it with an electric motor. After lying fallow for several years at Bulverhythe, the legendary open topper returned to active service as part of the celebration surrounding the Coronation of June 1953. On its front dash was an E2R crest. Restored and repainted, it twinkled with a myriad of coloured lights. The public were encouraged to step back 25 years and take a ride on this pioneer trolleybus. So for the next 6 seasons, Happy Harold ran between the fish market and the bathing pool. Fortunately, most passengers didn't have to get out to push. During the 1953 season, some other vehicles carried miniature Coronation crowns. On a somewhat wet and windy the 12th of June, the Southern Counties Touring Society arrived in the resort on board former London Transport Leyland TF1 of 1937. This had been subsequently sold to Castle Coaches of Lewisham in 1946. Time was taken to ride and film Happy Harold, bedecked in its Coronation finery. Enjoying the ride were such notable enthusiasts as Ken Farrell. And Jack Law, to whom this video is dedicated. Jack, a noted sound engineer, was part of the Southern Counties group of prestigious filmmakers. Alighting at Couden Beach after a somewhat breezy ride.
Warming up that build, is it?
DYL 904 makes a spirited departure from the coach park. Jim Joyce filmed the local transport scene during several visits in the early 50s. This is a Maidstone and District Bristol L6A. A pre-war Southdown Leyland Titan. Finally, a Maidstone and District open-top Leyland. After the 1950 route reorganisation, there were 4 trolleybus services, 2, 6, 8 and 11. Hastings liked its electric buses. They were cheap, reliable and ideally suited to the town's steep hills, but they were also under threat. In 1955, the corporation decided not to exercise its right to purchase the system. Knowing another opportunity would occur in 1960, Maidstone and District, who had no wish to operate trolleybuses, sought to wind up the tramways company and substitute buses. This provoked a vigorous local Save the Trolleys campaign. Crossing the A21. Note the different livery styles in the next sequences. In this 1955 scene by John Arnold, one of the long withdrawn single-deckers has its poles on the overhead. Impervious to the threat of closure, Happy Harold was the star turn during the second half of the 50s. Here it was filmed carrying a party of enthusiasts during the summer of 1955. Breaking all the rules of etiquette, this particular old lady had no problem revealing her age. In fine weather, locals and visitors simply relished a ride on an open topper. Open-top buses were also popular along the coast at Eastbourne. On a Southern Counties outing in May 1949, members board a petrol-engined all-Leyland TD2, White Queen, for a ride to Beachy Head. Another tour, this time on number 30, a 1948 AEC Regent with a handsome East Lancashire body. Action in Willingdon Village before construction of the bypass. Eastbourne would eventually relinquish this rural route to Southdown. Leaving Eastbourne Corporation's Churchdale Road depot, long since demolished. This AEC Regent, with Northern Counties body seen at Meads in the east part of the town, was converted to an open topper in 1954. A newly converted all-Leyland TD4. A good view of the Northern Counties body design. This Leyland Lion, number 12 of 1939, is now owned by the East Sussex Omnibus Society. In the next sequences, note the Southdown Guy Arabs on Route 97, which served Beachy Head. From 1954, tram enthusiasts such as Roy Hubble also started visiting Eastbourne, when the resort became host to a miniature 2-foot gauge line owned and operated by Modern Electric Tramways Limited. Eventually running for just under 1 mile, it opened in stages between July 1954 and 1958, the trams providing a useful link between the Royal Parade and the borough boundary on the Crumbles. Despite Eastbourne's claim to be the sun trap of the south, the tramway's owner and operator Claude Lane always referred to it as the wind trap of the south, and indeed the ride could be somewhat exposed, with the result that it didn't really lend itself to evening or out-of-season operation. Passing the original 1954 depot. Despite his reservations about the location, Claude Lane did invest in a new depot and works in 1958-9. This open-top bogie car with cross-bench seating in the lower saloon dated from 1956. Number 7 of 1958 differed by having 2 end saloons. In 1961, 6 would be rebuilt to the same pattern. Both resemble former Bournemouth Corporation trams sold to Llandudno, and both incorporated parts from these cars purchased when they were broken up. Yet more open toppers. This time Guy's, owned by Southdown, are seen passing Royal Parade Depot, subsequently demolished for the McCarthy and Stone flats. Phil Tatt filmed some of the original smaller cars on the Eastbourne tramway. This replica Blackpool boat dated from 1954. Each tram was powered by one 10-horsepower motor. Blackpool at Eastbourne. Boat car 225, the second oldest in the fleet, had been built in 1948. A glimpse of four-wheel open-topper number 3. The line would finally close on the 14th of September 1969, following the decision to uproot and move lock, stock and barrel to Seaton in Devon. Only the new workshop survived, being reassembled at Windmill Hill near Hailsham. The arrival of the railway in 1851 transformed Hastings into a major south coast resort, with much to offer the day tripper as well as the long-term visitor. Included were the town's 2 cliff railways. Opened in 1891, the West Hill Lift, a funicular, runs in part through a natural cave at a grade of 1 in 3. Powered by an electric motor since 1971, the lift is owned and operated by the Borough Council. The brick-clad tunnel is 363 feet long. The more exposed East Hill Lift opened in 1903 and is the steepest in England with a grade of 1 in 2.8. These historic views by Jack Wise show the original carriages. This 500-foot-long line was worked until 1973 as a water balance lift, with the filling tanks situated beneath the cars. Each Edwardian carriage was sufficiently wide to accommodate bath chairs. After a period of closure, the lift was reopened in 1976 and is now powered by electricity. Like many other seaside towns, Hastings also has its miniature railway. These late 50s views show the line's magnificent steam locos. Today the railway is still in operation, but on a foreshortened right-of-way. Another local favourite was to take the 1 and 6penny trip round the town on board one of Maidstone and District's small Dennis Aces. Dating from 1934, these delightful little buses last ran in the early 60s. Now celebrating its 28th year, number 3 even featured on the back of the timetable. Happy Harold seemed able to turn a blind eye to the threat of abandonment. Sadly, however, the battle for Hastings Trolleybuses was being lost. As from October the 1st, 1957, the tramway company ceased to exist, the vehicles now displaying the Maidstone and District legend. The trolleybuses were entering a period of great uncertainty. The local railway scene altered hugely with replacement of steam on the London Hastings service at the end of the 50s. The new diesel-electric multiple units known as Hastings had specially narrow bodies, enabling them to pass through the various restricted tunnels. 1001 is still operating locally in 2004. Steam has occasionally returned to Hastings. For example, in 1992, West Country Pacific 34027 arrives on a train from Ashford. Preserved Hastings Unit 1001 still works on the Ashford line, as well as on a variety of advertised excursions. Here it crosses one of the new generations of diesels at Rye in the summer of 2004. As this was to be the last full year of trolleybus operation, several tours were organised. Probably the best attended was that arranged by the Norbury and District Model Railway Society on the 14th of September 1958, when Happy Harold covered most of the wiring. However, as it was not fitted with coasting brakes, it was not allowed onto the steeper sections. This tour was covered by 3 filmmakers. Passing the fish market prior to climbing up the narrow high street. A really tight squeeze. The turning circle at the junction of the Ridge and Rye Road. These scenes by Mike Skeggs. Participants had boarded outside the station at 2:30. Approaching the western extremity at Couden Beach. Phil Tapp made the following record of the tour. Latterly, the unidirectional station loop saw no regular service. At Orr, the poles were lowered to allow a service bus to pass. Leaving St Helens at the start of the anti-clockwise run round the rural circular. Out in the country. Crossing the A21 before turning sharply into Settlescombe Road North. Outbound for Couden. The trams had once crossed the marsh on the right on their own private right-of-way. Here the trams had rejoined the main road. On the circle at Couden Beach. Heading back towards Bexhill and St Leonard's. Note the Bristol L6A. Turning at Hollington. Journey's End at Silver Hill Depot. Sunbeam number 32 of 1947 on the station loop at the start of another tour. Four trolleys are seen at St Helens as number 25, one of the immediate post-war Park Royal Sunbeams, heads north, with 32 in close pursuit. These are the only known sequences showing operations on the steeply graded Langham Loop. Turning into Mount Pleasant Road. Elphinstone Road. Leighton Road, not in regular use since 1940. Every tour had to include the bracing run out to Coodon Beach. It had been decided that all 4 routes should be replaced together. Circular Route 2, journey time 43 minutes, was worked in both directions. The U-shaped 6 took 30 minutes. The longest route, the 8, took 45 minutes. The 11 covered Hollington St Helens in 36 minutes. The next section, covering key parts of the system, was filmed mostly during 1958-59 by a variety of cameramen, Messrs Bishop, Clark, Fernie, Jones, Luff, Prithik Evans, Skeggs and Tatt. The number 2 required just 2 vehicles, one working each way round the circle. Most 6s work between Hollington and Orr. Views first on the Hollington section southwards along Battle Road. On the very outer limit of this section seen here, the wiring gauge was 2 foot, as opposed to the standard 18 inches. This had been the first trolleybus route opened with such pride and pomp some 30 years earlier. Approaching Silver Hill Junction. All 4 routes circumnavigated the Memorial Clock Tower. In the background, a 6 emerges from Queen's Road, whilst a 2 heads towards Castle Street. Unfortunately, no film has come to light of the Alexandra Park branch, and very little of the steeper sections of the 6, where drivers had to engage their coasting brakes to prevent runaways. Between the Memorial and the Fish Market, the trolleybuses blended in with the thousands of visitors, the hotels and boarding houses, the cafes and cinemas, and the scores of other amenities. Place. Heading west to Sunbeam 29, followed by AC number 3. Skirting the boating pool and the higgledy-piggledy mix of pubs, shops and cafes. At Fish Market there was a turning circle used by Happy Harold when working to the bathing pool. Action at the foot of the High Street. The extreme narrowness of this ancient thoroughfare meant the trolleybuses could only pass in selected spots. This was the heart of Old Hastings, with its small shops and timbered houses. The sixes reached the Ore Loop by way of Priory Road. Inbound between St Helens and Ore. The turning circle at St Helens was located outside the cemetery gates. An 11 heads for Hollington, journey time 36 minutes. On part of its clockwise journey round the circular, a 2 arrives at St Helens. This lightly trafficked route was very much the preserve of the 85 horsepower batch of Sunbeams. Further views on the bridge spanning the A21. Tragically, the imposing memorial clock tower erected in memory of Prince Albert was damaged by fire and demolished in 1973. From the memorial, the long westward prongs served St Leonard's and Bexhill-on-Sea. As far as the junction at Grand Parade, the wiring was shared by the 8s and the 11s. Passing the White Rock Pavilion, now the White Rock Theatre, opposite the pier. A visitor from London. Only the 8 covered the wiring through Bexhill-on-Sea. Except during the season, loadings on the final 1.5 miles along Couden Drive, with its distinctive side bracket arms, were sparse. This allowed drivers to show a good turn of speed. However, westbound trolleys could not pull over to the curb for fear of dewiring. The turning circle fringed the shingle beach. Happy Harold took to the wires for the final time in 1959. These sequences by Harry Luff were taken during the Whitsun holiday, when the 31-year-old veteran was working between the fish market and the bathing pool. Turning inland towards the West Marina turning circle. The end came on the 31st of May, 1959. Since 1940, all services had been worked from Silver Hill. Originally, the trolleys had entered and left in the reverse direction. All repair work was also undertaken here. During the final months, several trolleys were laid up awaiting sale or disposal. Opened a century ago as a tram depot, the building still contains a few interesting relics. Outside, rusting reminders of the trolleybuses. On the final day, scores of enthusiasts paid their final respects. During the afternoon and evening, trolleybuses were to be in complete control, so some of the new Leyland Atlanteans, which had been covering for trolleybus duties, were returned to Silver Hill. All the 1940 AECs were to be scrapped. Even the Tower Wagon made an appearance. This was a cut-down former Chatham District Bristol KG5. Observing activity at St Helens for the last time. '39 managed to disgrace itself on the tightly angled circle. Note the virtual absence of other road traffic and the people heading for the adjacent cemetery. '39 was destined for a new lease of life in Walsall. Later in the evening, number 28 worked the last trip, and the following day, June the 1st, a procession featuring Happy Harold, Sunbeam 34 and a new Atlantean toured part of the system. Although Hastings had dispensed with electric traction, all the post-war vehicles saw further service elsewhere. Maidstone snapped up the 5 Sunbeam Ws in the best condition. Eight more of the Wayman-bodied 95 horsepower Sunbeams travelled to Walsall. The last pair of Waymans, together with the 10 lower-powered Park Royal Sunbeams, went to Bradford. There they spent a relatively short time. Acquired very much as a stopgap, they did, however, have their pedal positions altered during 1961. Known in Bradford as lively performers, all 12 were withdrawn between November 1962 and October 1963. Another look now at the local railway scene. As part of the beaching cuts, the branch from Bexhill West to Crowhurst was closed to all traffic as from the 15th of June 1964. Fortunately, the elegant terminal buildings at Bexhill have survived. Terry Velvick filmed the branch train during its dying days. Once this station had handled considerable seasonal traffic. The only intermediate station. At Crowhurst, passengers transferred to the main line. The final steam outpost in the area was at the Eastbourne Gas and Electricity Works. Here a 1927 040 saddle tank was used to bring coal into the plant. Operations ceased in April 1967, with closure of the goods-only Eastbourne Crumbles branch. Maidstone disposed of its 5 Hastings starting in 1965, although number 89 was used on the last day, the 15th of April 1967. Walsall squeezed an extra decade from their Hastings, the bulk being withdrawn after service on the 13th of February 1970. But that was not quite the end of the story. Fitted with a diesel engine, veteran number 3 continued to take to the road, but sadly no longer under the wires. Currently in Hastings is Sunbeam 34, which is owned by the London Trolleybus Preservation Society. Some profit from the sale of this tape will go towards the work being undertaken by the Hastings Trolleybus Restoration Group. Together, the three surviving vehicles provide a magnificent reminder of the electric fleet which for over 30 years gave such good service to the people of Hastings.